Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Stephanie Brown. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions here at Mendoza College of Business. And you are joining me for the MSBA, that's MS in Business Analytics, Application Q&A webinar. So again, thank you all so much for joining me. I want to do a very quick audio check. So if you can use the raise hand feature, can someone just raise your hand to let me know? Oh, perfect. Got so many good listeners out there. Everyone can hear me. Perfect. Thank you so much, guys. All right, so I'm ready to dive in and talk to you about all things business analytics application today. But first, again, thank you so much for joining me. I know that so many of you are joining me from across the country. So some places you're on the same time as me. It's 7:00 p.m. here in Indiana. Others are a little bit earlier. And then I do have a lot of you who are joining me across the world. So it's early next morning, tomorrow, Wednesday, for some of you, are very late at night. So again, I really appreciate your time that you have taken out of your schedule to learn more about this program. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. If you do have microphone ability, please do keep yourself muted. That will cut back on any background noise or interference so everyone can hear me clearly. I do intend this to be a Q&A webinar, so I want to answer your questions. So feel free to go ahead and include questions in the Q&A function. So please don't use the chat feature. I won't be monitoring that, but I will be looking at the Q&A feature throughout the webinar. So if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to include those in the Q&A feature. But hopefully I will be answering a lot of your questions as I go along. Okay. All right, well, I'd love to go ahead and get started. So first, who are you talking to? Well, that's me. So I'm Stephanie Brown, again, as I said, Assistant Director of Admissions here at Mendoza College of Business, specifically for our graduate business programs. And my primary responsibility is to be the main recruiter and admissions representative for the MS in Business Analytics. I also do work with admissions for our MS in Business Analytics dual degree with our MBA as well. But I absolutely love this program, and I'm excited to share more about this this program with you. And just so you know too, I'm the first person who reads your application before it goes to the admissions committee for a final review, which is why you get to talk to me tonight. So I'm going to give you some great inside tips on how to proceed with your application and how to best present yourself with the admissions committee. My job is your advocate, to be your advocate and tell the admissions committee why we hope to have you here at Mendoza. So just a little bit about me. If you have started your application, you will know that we ask you for 4 slides to tell us a little bit more about who you are. And just to save time tonight, I'm not going to do 4 slides, but I'm including 4 photos here to tell you a little bit more about me, so you know more about your admissions representative. So that first photo you see up in the top left, that's me with my husband and my 2 sons. Their names are Finley and Connor. And, this is sort of a twofold photo in that we are at the Notre Dame football stadium. This was taken last year. I absolutely love my family and my children. My favorite job is being a mom first. And we also love Notre Dame. I grew up here in South Bend, so I've always known about Notre Dame. So it's very close to my heart, and it's a privilege for me to be able to work here now. Second photo on the top right there is glitter. I love glitter. More importantly, I love crafting. I love anything that involves painting or gluing or putting things together. And it's something that I like to do in my free time when I'm not busy being a mom. And my kids love this hobby of mine too. They like to join me. Next photo is bottom left. You will see there a Starbucks cup and some pumpkins. Now, I'm pretty sure that this photo was meant to advertise the pumpkin spice latte that is very popular right now at Starbucks. But for me, this photo represents two things. Coffee. Can't get my day started without it. Love coffee. I drink too much of it, which means I stay up late at night. Starbucks is my favorite coffee. But more importantly, the pumpkins in that photo represent fall, the fall season. And it is my favorite season. I love the cool, crisp air. I love all of the things that go along with it. The changing leaves on the trees in the fall. I love the bonfires, the food that comes with the fall season, and my birthday is in the fall too, so that's extra special for me. And the last photo there, bottom right, is Target symbol. It's my favorite store, but fun fact about me, it was my very first job when I was growing up. When I turned 16, I was told I had to get a job to pay for gas money for my car, so I got a job at Target. I love shopping there. And in fact, I actually met my husband working there. And so you really can find anything at Target, including a husband. So that's just a little bit about me. And I just want you to know who I am, that I am the person behind the program. I'm the person behind your application, and I'm here to help you along the way. So never hesitate to reach out to me. Now that you know a little bit more about me, I'm always happy to help. All right, so moving on. What can we expect in the webinar this evening? First of all, I'm going to be going through the application components. So what are we requiring you to submit with your application? I'm also going to be talking about tips from me, from the admissions committee, that will really help you with each of those application components. I'm also going to cover deadlines and our admissions timeline so that you have a better sense of how to prepare over the next couple of months. And then I will be talking about, or I'll be answering your questions. So that's my primary goal today, is to make sure that your questions are answered. All right, and I see some of you already have some questions submitted, so we will definitely dive into those as well. So let's first go through the application checklist. So what are you required to submit with your application? We are requiring a resume. We require 2 recommendations, and I will talk more about each of these as we go along. We require transcripts from all of the institutions that you have attended. We have prerequisites for the program, courses that we feel will help you prepare for the curriculum. And we also require a GMAT or a GRE score. If you're an international applicant, we do require either a TOEFL, an IELTS, or a PTE, and I will talk more about that. There are some waivers involved with that, but we'll discuss that more in a few slides. We require an essay. There are 2 options on your application, but you just need to write one. And then we also require a slide presentation, which I mentioned previously in my introduction, and we'll dive more into that as well throughout the presentation. So let's go ahead and get started with item number 1. That's your resume. So your resume should be 1 page, okay? I know it's hard to condense all of that information that you want to share down into 1 page, but remember you have an application that will include much of that information as well. So try to keep your resume to 1 page. For some of you, you're wondering, how do I fill a full page resume? And that's okay too. I'm here to talk about that. So on your resume, you can include anything from internships that you have completed, even if it was just a 1-month internship, very short. Put that in there. Even if your internship had nothing to do with business analytics or business for that matter, it's still professional work experience that we want to know about. So go ahead and include any internships that you have done, professional experiences that could include research, or maybe you were just maybe you weren't quite doing an internship, but you were just kind of observing a professional in some sort of manner. Perhaps you were a teaching assistant or a research assistant. Those are great things to put on your resume. Clubs and organizations you've been involved in as well in your undergrad experience. Any part-time or summer jobs. It doesn't have to be anything professional. maybe I would, if I was your age and I was applying to this program, I would put my target job down. You can put in any community involvement that you have done, potentially, working at a homeless shelter or a food bank or an animal shelter or any type of community service that you've done. We love to see that. That follows the mission of Mendoza and Notre Dame. And so, of course, we want to hear more about those involvements. Any technical skills that you have gained through your education, or through maybe some certificate courses or programs you have done, anything that you have self-studied as well, please put those in there. That's very helpful for me and for the admissions committee. That could be things like R and Python, SQL, any other types of analytics tools, Tableau, for instance, things like that. Please include that on your resume. Those are things that I look for. Any competitions, case competitions or hackathons that you have done or been involved in, we love to hear about that as well. Any research that you have done or big projects that you have completed at the undergraduate level that really give us more detail about the kind of research skills or analytic skills or tools that you might have picked up along the way. So all of those can be included in a resume. So don't worry if you're concerned about filling up a full page. Once you think about those items, you'll fill up a full page. All right. Okay, so next item on our list is going to be recommendations. So we do require 2 recommendations. All right. Now you do have an option to include a third. What I say about that is, if you're going to include a third recommender, please make sure that that recommender is giving us additional information that the other 2 recommenders were not able to provide, okay? So if it's just another professor talking about how well you did in class, that doesn't give us new information. So the third recommender is someone who can speak to a different aspect or quality of you, okay? If you are currently an undergraduate student, we do require that one of those recommenders be an academic recommender. So a professor who knows you well from class, perhaps an academic advisor who has worked closely with you, a professor who has been guiding you through a research project, or something similar. So those are great academic references. The second one can be a professional reference. If you've had an internship, as I mentioned, we would love to hear more about that internship and about your professional skills, your professional behavior as well. And so a professional reference will really be able to dive into that for us. You might also, if you are involved in sports, a coach could be an excellent recommender. They can talk about your teamwork skills. They can talk about your leadership skills as well. Those are all very important in business school, and they're important in our interview and application review process. So feel free to include a coach. Perhaps an organizational leader who knows you well, maybe someone who leads a volunteer organization that you have participated in, or a club leader who's worked closely with you if you have had extensive involvement in a school club or organization. So someone like that who can talk more about your campus involvement, about your leadership. Again, those are great details to know, and recommenders can speak very highly of those. Okay, so I do see that there's lots of questions coming in. So let's see, I'm going to go back and I'll answer a lot of these questions at the end, but let's see, some that are related right now. So regarding research, do we include submitted articles and working papers in our resume? For submitted articles, I do have a manuscript number. I would say don't include those in your resume, but those could be included as a supplemental document in your application. We do want to keep that resume very short, okay? But if you want us to know more about these projects that you've worked on, the research that you've done, absolutely include those as supplemental documents within your application, okay? All right, so I'm going to come back to some of those others that have been submitted. and I definitely will get to those. I promise. I want to try to keep these questions to the slides. So let's see, next on the list, transcripts. All right, so we do require transcripts from all of the institutions that you have attended. So, you know, even if you have transferred from one institution to another and those classes and grades have been included on your new transcript, we still do need that original transcript from the first school that you attended. If you have done a summer immersion program at an institution, again, a transcript. The only instance where we wouldn't need a transcript is if, for instance, when you were in high school, you completed you know, perhaps some sort of a college course in your high school, but you did receive college credit for it. We don't need a transcript from that class. So that class will most likely be transferred from your high school transcript to your college transcript. And that's far enough back that we don't need that particular transcript, okay? Now, if you're an international student, we do require that you have your transcript translated to English. We do not require a WES evaluation or any sort of similar evaluation. We can do that on our end if we absolutely need to, but we typically are able to get a sense of your grading scale and the particular type of evaluation for your courses from the documents that are submitted. Okay. All right, so let's see here. All right, actually, good question from a previous slide about references. If you are currently working and graduated back in 2019, do you still need an academic reference? Nope, you don't have to. If you have 2 professional references, if you're, you know, full-time working and you have been doing so for a year or more, absolutely you can go with 2 professional references instead of an academic reference. That is perfectly fine. It's a great question. Thank you. Okay, another question related to this slide. If I took 1 or 2 classes from a university and transferred it to my undergrad, do I need a transcript from that university? If it was just 1 or 2 classes, most likely you don't need to. It's if you spent a full semester, a full year or more at a different university. If you just took, you know, a 1-off or a 2-off class in order to satisfy some requirements, I don't think that we need a full transcript for that one. Okay. All right, moving on then to the next slide. Thank you guys for all of these great questions. Okay, prerequisites are next. So for the MSBA, we require 3 prerequisites: statistics, and then 2 business courses, which could be in any area that includes accounting, finance, management, or marketing. Okay, now we do approve many economics classes as well as those 2 business classes. Every once in a while, there's a statistics class that you've taken in an econ major that will count for statistics as well. So if you're wondering, will my econ class count as one of these prerequisites? Send me an email. Include your transcript. Unofficial transcript is fine. I can take a look at it and I can let you know if your prerequisites have been satisfied, okay? Now, if you're looking at this and saying, I haven't finished these prerequisites yet and I don't have time to add them into my senior year, or I'm done with school and I'm no longer taking any classes, what can I do? So in that case, we do allow you to take classes online. It can even be through a certificate platforms like Coursera, edX, LinkedIn Learning, similar platforms that provide coursework through accredited institutions, okay? So if you want to take a class in that method in order to satisfy your prereqs, you absolutely can do that. What you will need to do, though, is through your application, you will need to submit a prerequisite completion form. You are prompted to do this in your application. And these instructions are part of your application, so you don't need to scramble and take a whole bunch of notes. You'll see it when you apply. With the prerequisite completion plan, you'll need to include the platform through which you are taking this class or classes, the course title, course description, the university through which the class is sponsored or provided, and your projected completion date. We do need you to specify your expected completion date, okay? So you should be enrolled in this program or this class at this point, all right? So keep that in mind, and we will check for completion at the end of the cycle, okay? Now we do ask that you have these classes completed no later than June 1st, okay? That gives us a chance to make sure you've completed everything, and that gives you just a little bit of time. If you haven't completed it, hopefully you have, in order for you to still squeeze that in before classes start, okay? Now, one thing that I'm going to warn you about, your application is likely going to give you a flagged warning saying you haven't submitted this prerequisite completion plan, okay? Now, that's just to remind you, if you need it, you need to submit it. If your classes or your prerequisites have been completed through your undergraduate program, they will be on your transcript. If they're on your transcript, I will see them. The admissions committee will see them. You don't need to do anything else, okay? I will look for the classes. So only if you have not completed your prerequisites and you have to submit your completion plan, that's when you would need to submit that paper, okay? You are able to submit your application without a prerequisite completion plan, even though it looks very much like you can't. You still can submit the application without that form. So don't feel like I've completed my classes, they're on my transcript, why do I need to submit this? You don't have to, okay? Just click submit, you'll be fine. All right. And I'm happy to answer more questions about that once you get to that point if you still have concerns, okay? All right, so next on the list, oh, actually, before we move on, I got a question here about that. Yes, so we do accept MOOC certifications as completion of the prerequisites, okay? Same thing though, you need to submit a completion plan. All right, let's see if there's any more. So typically, this is a good one. What grade earned for prerequisites would be sufficient? So I'm going to say that typically we would love to see a B or better, okay? And that's because these classes help us to know that you'll do well in the curriculum. But, you know, a C is okay. If you took classes after that and you got better grades after that, that's okay too. But we don't really have a minimum. We don't want to see a D, okay? So hopefully that answers your question. All right, another good question. Statistics courses have different curriculum in different colleges. What kind of topics should the class encompass to be able to fill the requirement? Honestly, if the class has statistics in the title, it's fine, okay? I understand that some is more theoretical, some is more applied. That's perfectly fine. If it has statistics in the class title, we will count it, okay? Hopefully that helps. Okay, another one. I have taken 2 business classes through Coursera and they're already complete. Do I put this in the online submission form or just on my resume? You can put that on your resume, but preferably, and actually this is a great question because this reminds me, if you've already completed your Coursera classes or your certificate classes from any platform, you'll have a certificate or at least some sort of indication of completion. Please send that to me. Send that to me in a PDF document. That way I know. And then we'll have record of it, and then, excuse me, the admissions committee won't come back and ask you as they're reviewing your application and wonder, do you have this class? So go ahead and send us that certificate of completion if you already have it or once you've completed it, and then we will go ahead and count those classes complete. So thank you for that question. That was a good reminder for me. Okay, another good question. If we took classes that we think would satisfy the prerequisites, can we check with you to verify? Absolutely, please do so. If you're not 100% sure, I'd rather you not get a surprise later on when the admissions committee has seen your application. So send me a name and either a link to the course description or just copy and paste the course description into that email to me. And I'm absolutely happy to look over that for you. And if I approve it or if the program director approves it, then I will make a note in your application so that we don't have to ask later. Okay, great questions, guys. Okay, let's see, any more? These, you got, your questions are just rolling in. Okay, would it be, this is a good question, would it be helpful if I highlight classes which fulfill the prerequisites in the transcript? That's not necessary. That's actually something that I do as part of the review process. So I'll go through and look. If you think I will miss a class and that I won't know that it fulfills the prerequisites because I'm not familiar with the course description, include that with your application. That's the best way to do it, okay? Great questions. All right. Okay, we're going to move on now. So the GMAT and GRE scores, the next checklist item. All right, so I know that last year, or this past admission cycle was crazy for most everybody because of COVID-19. A lot of testing centers shut down for a long time. Some of them are still shut down. They're just now starting to open. GRE and GMAT both started offering online versions of their tests. It definitely was a mess. And so I will say that last cycle, we did end up waiving the GMAT and the GRE scores because it was nearly impossible for many applicants to take those exams. Things have changed quite a bit here in the US and in many other countries. And so that application requirement has been reinstated. Okay, so we are now requiring that those tests once again. If you have a very serious situation where you're not able to take those exams for any reason, please reach out to me. I can't guarantee that we can make a waiver for you. We might have to kind of figure out some alternative. It's very rare that we would waive these exams if testing centers are open, but please do reach out to me if you have troubles, okay? Now, we will accept either the GMAT or the GRE. You don't have to take both, one or the other. Most of the applicants for this program have very strong quantitative skills, and so they tend to gravitate towards the GMAT, which is focused more on quantitative skills, but either one will be just fine. So you choose the one that fits best with you, okay? Now, if you have scheduled your exam, but you haven't taken it yet, and you actually aren't going to be taking it until after the application deadline, that's okay. You can actually submit your application without the scores being uploaded. You can just include a future test date in your application, okay? One of the other things that is very helpful for you is that you can actually submit your unofficial student test taker copy of your score report to satisfy this checklist requirement. Okay, we don't need the official score sent directly from the testing center at this time. We will need that official score report at some time, but that wouldn't be until if you are admitted and you choose to enroll in the program, and then at that point we're going to need your official copy. Okay, so please feel free to just include that unofficial copy in order to check this item off your list. It's one less thing you have to worry about, and it will save you some time in getting your application processed, okay? Now, just to give you an idea of where our current class was at in terms of scores, these are our middle 80% ranges for admitted students, okay? Now, I want you to know that these are not the 654 and the 310, those are not minimums, okay? Those are just, that's the bottom part of that middle 80% range. This just gives you an idea of a strong range of scores that you can aim for to be considered a stronger applicant, okay? But please know that this is not an intelligence test. It doesn't measure how smart you are. It measures skills that you have retained. It can tell us what your quantitative ability is, which does help us to better understand how well you will do in the program, but it is by no means the only piece of information that we use to make an admissions decision. We will look at everything else. We will look at your grades, we'll look at your work experience, your recommendations, your writing, your slides, all of that. So please don't get too caught up on these scores. We will look at many other pieces, okay? You're welcome to retake. You can submit 2, 3, or more scores, but don't overdo it, okay? There's only so much you can do in terms of increasing your scores, so don't feel like you have to keep retaking and retaking to get a certain score, okay? You also can take a practice test online. Okay, take some practice tests and get familiar with the types of questions and the timing. That helps as well, okay? And that can also help you figure out which test you really want to take. You might do better with the way questions are asked on the GRE versus the GMAT. And those practice tests are a really great way to figure that out, okay? All right, so let's take a look. Do we have any questions about these tests? Okay, let's see here. Let's see, recommendations. Oh, going back to recommendations. Are recommendations due before or on the application due date, or is there flexibility? So we're going back to the recommendation slide. Your recommender contact information is due at the time of the application deadline. The recommendations themselves can come in after the deadline with no penalty to you. Great question, and I will talk about that a little bit more later. So is the GMAT online accepted in lieu of the normal GMAT? Absolutely. If you are only able to take the online version of the GMAT or the GRE, absolutely, you can definitely do that. We have, we did have many students this past cycle that took the online version, and they did very well. They had a great positive experience. Feel free to do that. Okay. All right, so let's see here. Going to the asking questions about the GPA. I'll get back to that a little bit later. This is a great question. Does the admissions committee weigh the quantitative score more than the verbal and other sections? Actually, yes, we do, especially for this program. With the MSBA being more technical and quantitative focused, we are looking at that quant score more heavily. In terms of the verbal score, we do look at that, but you're going to be writing an essay, you're going to be putting together slides, you potentially could be interviewing with us, so we will be able to see more of your language skills in those pieces. So it's a little bit harder to get a sense of your quantitative ability other than grades and classes and then this exam. Okay, good question. Okay, so I'm going to come back to some of these other questions. Great questions, everybody. You're keeping me thinking and on track too, so I appreciate that. All right, so next slide, more tests, but this time for our fantastic international students. So if you are an international applicant, like I said before, we do require either the TOEFL, the IELTS, or the PTE. Any one of those 3 exams is perfectly acceptable for us. And these scores, very similar to the GMAT and the GRE, the scores can be submitted after the deadline with no penalty. So if you haven't taken the exam yet, that's okay. Include a future test date. And you can also include your unofficial score report to check this item off of your checklist. We would only need the official report, again, if you have been admitted and you choose to enroll in the program, okay? So keep that in mind. That's a very quick way to satisfy this requirement. Now, I did mention that you could potentially have a waiver for this exam. So if you are an international applicant who has studied in the US at a US institution for 3 consecutive academic years, then we will waive this exam, okay? So I'm sorry to anyone who has already completed maybe a 1-year master's program or a 2-year master's program in the US. Unfortunately, that's not quite enough time. So hopefully if you've completed 3 consecutive academic years in the US, in a US school, you can be waived. Also, if you are an international applicant who has studied in your home country or another country outside the US, but the medium of instruction at your institution is English, then this also can be waived. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind, even if you have been waived of the TOEFL IELTS requirement, all international applicants are asked to complete a video language assessment through a platform called Kira, and you would get an invitation to complete this assessment typically at some point after the application deadline, okay? So it won't be immediate right after you submit your application, but it will be at some point right after the deadline passes, and then we go through and we manually will invite you to do this assessment. So this assessment, what it involves is you will see me and some of my colleagues asking you questions on video, and you will respond to those questions on video, okay? It's recorded, so it's not real time, and those videos will get sent to us. And that gives us a much better sense of your English language abilities beyond what these tests can provide, okay? So just know that all international applicants will be asked to complete that assessment. There's some really interesting questions. It's actually a lot of fun. And from what I have seen in the assessments I review, it usually takes an average of 10 minutes. So not much time out of your schedule to complete that, okay? All right. Let's see here. So let's go back to the questions and see if there are any other questions here. Okay. There's a couple. If I'm not getting to your question, I might be answering privately. If it's a little bit more of an individual question, I might be answering privately, just so you know. Let's see here. So let's see, what's an average quant score for an admitted student that on the GRE? That's a great question, and actually I would have to go back and take a look because we typically are, you know, looking more at the full scores. I do look at the quant scores. So, but I would say that a strong score would be maybe in like a 70th percentile or higher is what we would consider a strong quant score, if that's helpful, because I know they give you the percentiles on there. Let's see here. All right, so, good question about the Kira language assessment. How many attempts do you get for the Kira? So now in the platform, you'll have a chance to sort of do some practice runs on those questions before you actually answer them live. You know, so you'll have some time. It's not like a pass fail. So there's, you know, you don't have to worry about failing it and will we give you another try. It really is just to get a better sense of your English speaking skills. So don't think of it that way. It's not a test. It's just to be able to hear you speak and also to get to know more about you too. So, you know, if for some reason something went really wrong with the platform because of connectivity, I'm happy to be able to give you another shot at it and we can reissue the invitation. So don't worry about that. Those unique situations, you can reach out to me and we'll make sure that everything gets fixed, okay? All right, here. Okay, another good question here. If I apply early action or early decision and do not have my scores yet, should I try to take the test before the early action decision comes out, or will that not matter? That is a great question and another great reminder for me. So as I've mentioned, you don't have to have your tests taken and completed by the time you apply, your scores can be sent in after the fact. However, we do need your GMAT or GRE, TOEFL, IELTS scores before we can review your application and make a decision. So my recommendation to you is get the test taken within 2 weeks of the decision date for your round, okay? That gives us 2 weeks to review your application and send it through the entire admissions committee review process before that decision date comes around, because we do ultimately want you to have your decision on time, okay? If we don't have the scores by the decision date, you won't get a decision yet. We will wait until those scores are turned in, or any other missing items for that matter. We will wait until they are turned in, and then we will review your application and get you a decision as soon as we can after that decision date. But do your best to get the scores in before then. Okay, great question there. Okay, I'm not entirely sure about this question. Are we going to get the Cura language invitation after the final deadline? Oh, yes, I do understand. So yeah, you will most likely, I don't know 100% the timing of when those invitations go out. I have a colleague who helps me out with that. But you will likely get a Cura invitation if you are an international student at some point around the application deadline. It might be before, right after you submit your application, or it might be at some point right after that deadline passes if you submitted your application a bit earlier than the deadline. So just look for it. If you haven't gotten anything within a couple of weeks of the deadline passing, let me know. And it could be that it was just missed, but typically that's not the case. It's very rare that would happen. Okay, that's a great question. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. Thank you all so much for these great questions here. All right, so the essay is next, okay? So the essay, I think for some could be the scariest part of the application, but I will tell you that it's one of the most interesting pieces for us to review because we get to know you. Now, you will have 2 topics to choose from in your application. And you just choose one. You don't need to write 2 essays. We just want you to have one. And your essay should be 2 pages typed double-spaced. Those are the only parameters that we have. It doesn't matter what font. It doesn't matter what the margins are. I know you're probably used to having to write like that right now, but we're not that picky. So you'll want to include, I ask that you please include the prompt, your essay prompt, at the very beginning of your essay. That way I know what you're writing about. Sometimes it's actually not very clear which prompt an applicant is responding to, and so it's very helpful for me if you can include that at the top of your essay. All right, so the essay it's just meant to supplement your application. Okay, it's meant to give us more personal information about you. It's meant to help you dive deeper into what makes you you, or to dive deeper into a particular instance in your life that has been important to you. We don't need you to reiterate your your resume or your transcript. We will see all of that information in your application. So this should be new information, okay? Feel free to include a little bit of your personality in your essay. Feel free to be more personal, okay? We do look for, good grammar and spelling and a good grasp of English language, but ultimately our main goal is to get to know you better through this essay, okay? Now, I will give you a tip, okay? If there is a personal instance or some information that you really, really, really feel that the admissions committee needs to know about you as they are reviewing your transcript, or, maybe you want to explain why grades looked the way they did in a certain semester or something like that. Your essay is probably not the best venue for that, because that's not going to fit into the prompt, okay? And we want you to answer the prompt. So don't try to squeeze in this additional information into a prompt that doesn't quite fit, okay? You do have an opportunity with your application to submit a supplemental essay or supplemental document. And that is what we would call the personal statement or the supplement that you will find as an additional piece to your application. So you're going to see that in one of the last pages of your application. It'll be an option for you. So if there's anything that you wish that we knew ahead of time in reviewing your application, then feel free to include that as a supplement, okay? I had a former director who used to say, if you wish you could be in the room when the admissions committee is talking about your application, and you wish you could be looking over the admission director's shoulder when they're looking at your transcript so that you could explain a certain grade or a certain semester, or if you could explain some piece of your resume, or any other information that you might think we might be confused or concerned about in your application, the supplement or the personal statement, that is your best place to put that information, okay? We would rather know more than not know enough, okay? So if there's anything you think we absolutely need to know to make the best decision for you, include that in the personal statement or the supplement, not the essay, okay? Unless it absolutely fits with an essay prompt, then that is okay too, okay? And please keep in mind too, we read every piece of your application. We review every word, all right? So never be afraid to include more information. We love to know more about you. We love to know about what's going on in your life, okay? All right, any questions there? Let's see here. All right, so someone's asking preferred font size and style. Standard 12-point font is fine. There's no other style guidelines other than two pages typed double-spaced. We are not picky, okay? Okay. All right. Good question about international applicants. So a student, a foreign student studying in the U.S. for 5+ years, are they considered an international applicant? Yes. You are considered an international applicant if you are not a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, okay? If you are a permanent resident who's been studying here and you've gained, residential status, then you are not an international student. But otherwise, if your country of residence is not the U.S., then you are considered an international applicant, okay? Let's see. Best writing format for the essay. Again, we are just not picky, guys. 2 pages typed, double-spaced. If you want a font size, 12 font. All right, that's the standard here in the U.S., so go with that. We don't have a word count. So again, if you fill 2 pages typed double space, that's great. If you are finding yourself going to single spacing in order to fit everything into 2 pages, I would try to cut it down a little bit, okay? It's actually very hard to read the single-spaced essays on the computer screen like we do with the format that they come through on. So if you're thinking, I need a single space to fit it all in, then this is a great exercise in editing, all right? Okay, so, we've got a question about the slides, which I think is next. So that's a good segue. Thank you. Yes, slides. So this is something that's actually very unique to Mendoza and to our graduate program applications. The slide presentation is probably the most curious piece of this application, and it's what I get the most questions about, okay? And yet it is my favorite part of the application because this is where your personality comes out, or where it should come out, okay? So the slide presentation, I will tell you, it should be 4 slides, okay? Not 4 minimum, not up to 4, but 4 slides, okay? These slides are valuable real estate for you to share great information about yourself. So I would avoid using the first slide and the last slide as a title and a closer. I would use each of the 4 slides to really share more about you. So my advice on these slides, again, similar to the essay, we want to know more about who you are. We want to know about your personality, what makes you tick, what you like, what you dislike. We're just trying to get a sense of the person behind the application. We're trying to get a sense of your fit in our fantastic community that we call a family, okay? So show us who your family knows. Show us who your friends know in these slides, okay? The best advice I can absolutely give you about these slides is that they should have new information, all right? Please do not reiterate your resume on your slides. Don't tell us, again, your internships or your undergraduate school and what your major was and that sort of thing. We will see that on your application. We're looking for new information, okay? So tell us about how you got to be who you are. Tell us about who is important in your life. Tell us about what is important in your life. Tell us how you spend your time. Give us a list of likes and dislikes. Give us some fun facts. Please feel free to be funny, to have fun, and to let your personality shine through. These slides, I know it's going to be hard because this is a business school application, and I know it will be hard to kind of let loose and not be professional in these slides. The only thing that needs to be professional about these slides is the layout. Make sure that they are organized. Make sure that I know what that particular slide is going to tell me. Okay, other than that, feel free to share any kind of wonderful, crazy, kooky information you want to share with me. Okay, the more I know you, the more I will know that you will be a great match for our family here at Mendoza. Okay. So have fun. This is where you should really have a lot of fun, okay? Now, I'm going to ask you, don't use the slides as another place to tell us information that you really wish that we knew in reviewing your applications, like why did you get a D in this class? Or why was this semester's worth of grades really low compared to everything else, okay? That, again, should be for the personal statement or the supplement, okay? Your slides, again, should just be about your individuality and your personality. Don't use it as another essay space, okay? Have a good balance of text and photos. We love to see photos. Now, if you're not comfortable putting photos of yourself on the slides, that's okay. I like to see what you look like personally. I like to see who I'm reading about, but absolutely, if you don't want to include a photo of yourself, you don't have to. Include a photo of your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your pets. I have pets. I love to see your pets. Include photos of your cooking. If you love to cook, if you love to do puzzles, or if you love to draw or sculpt things, or if you like crafting, you like to put glitter all over everything, show me a picture of that too, okay? You show me a picture of whatever you want, but include some photos with this text too. Help me visualize you a little bit more, even if it's not an actual picture of you. If you want to find stock photos on a Google search and include those, that's fine too. Maybe you want to tell me what your favorite videos are, your favorite books are. You can include stock photos of those, all right? Whatever you want. I'm trying to give you a ton of ideas as I'm talking about this, just so that you can get those juices flowing, okay? If you need help, email me, okay? I'm happy to talk you through some ideas too. Okay. All right. So let's take a look. Let's see. Okay. So good questions. Can I include a fun fact on my slides? Like, I love hiking. Absolutely. Yes. Please include fun facts. I love that. Okay. I love to learn more about those things. This should be as personal as possible. Another great question about the slides for the 4-page slide. Do you expect something more formal? No, and I just said that. It doesn't have to be formal. It just, the format itself should be professional enough that I can follow along and understand what you're telling me in that slide. But it can be completely informal, exactly like the 4 photos that I showed you at the beginning, okay? So have fun with it. And maybe you get some bonus points if anyone else includes Target in their slides, all right? Okay, so now next slide. We are getting close to the end, folks, I promise. All right, so admissions interview. So now I didn't include this on the checklist, but it is a piece of the application that could potentially come up for you. So many applicants, not all, but many applicants are invited to interview with me or one of my colleagues as part of the application process. It just helps us to get to know you a little bit better, and again, get a sense of your fit and your ability to complete the program. Don't be concerned if you don't get an invitation to interview. Don't be concerned if you do get an invitation to interview, okay? These interviews you should treat as a professional interview. So even though they're okay, so now I'm gonna say here, I'm gonna admit that I didn't check the slide and it says on campus or Zoom. So I'm gonna admit one thing here. It's all on Zoom right now. Unfortunately, in order to keep our students and faculty and staff safe, we are not actually having on-campus interviews this semester, okay? Maybe in the spring semester, I'm not sure, but if you are applying in the fall, your interview will be via Zoom, so the same platform we're using tonight. And so, you know, even though you're going to be in a Zoom interview, dress professionally, okay? If you're a guy, wear, you know, suit and tie. And if you're a woman, please wear, professional, even business casual is okay, kind of top, okay? But treat it as a professional interview like you were going for a job, okay? Typically, these last between 45 minutes to an hour. Nothing scary. We want to hear more about you. We want to know about why you're interested in the MSBA program, what you hope to obtain with your career path after the MSBA program. We might ask you about some past experiences. We might even talk about some fun things, okay? It's just a chance to get to know you a little bit better beyond your application. But again, don't worry if you didn't get an interview. Don't worry if you do. I promise it will be painless, okay? All right, great question. Going back to the slides, how do you present the slides? This is a great question, and thank you for the reminder. So actually, you don't have to present your slides at all. You will save your slides. It doesn't matter what platform you make them in. It could be Google Slides, it could be PowerPoint, you will actually save them as a PDF, and you will upload the PDF file to your application. And so I'll just look at it, okay? So you'll want to make sure that you're creating the slides as if you're not going to be talking through them, okay? So bullet points are fine, but if you're thinking, I'm going to present this and talk more about the bullet points and fill them out, you're not. So it should be everything, content-wise should be very clear. On the slides, what points you're trying to get across, okay? So just save them as a PDF and upload them that way. You don't have to present on a video and upload that, okay? Another good question about the theme or design of the slides. Could be any theme, any design you want. And in fact, I always look at the theme or design of the slides as an extension of your personality, okay? So maybe you want to include your favorite colors, or maybe you want to include your favorite plant or animals or characters. I had someone who went with a Minions theme for his slides last year. There was a yellow minion on every slide, and it was explained in the slides. You could do that if you want to. Hey, I remember it from a year ago, so it does obviously stand out. So you pick. That should be an extension of your personality, okay? These are great questions. Okay, moving back to the interview. If you don't get an interview, can you still get admitted to the program? Absolutely, okay, absolutely. It's not a requirement to be admitted, but chances are, I try to interview as many people as I can. I will tell you that it's just not possible, unfortunately, and that actually leads to the next question of you know, what are the reasons that you get an interview or not. Sometimes it's just a matter of, you know, there's some information in your application that I would love to know more about. Or maybe the admissions committee wants to kind of dive deeper onto your, you know, into your quantitative ability and the analytic skills that you have to get a better sense of that. So, you know, those might be some reasons why we ask you for an interview. So, you know, typically, you know, there is an initial review of your application, and then we decide, do we want the interview, or do we want to interview, or do we need to interview or not? If you really want a chance to talk with me and you haven't gotten an interview, email me. Say, hey, can we schedule a Zoom conversation? I'm happy to do that. If I have the time, I will definitely do that, okay? But wait for the interview invitation first, okay? And we'll see if that comes, and if not, if you really, really, really want to have a conversation with me, then I'll be happy to do that, okay? All right, so next slide. Getting to the end, guys. All right, so not listed as part of your checklist, but something that I always like to mention is that you can be automatically considered for fellowships, which is our name for a scholarship, so a merit-based fellowship or scholarship, when you apply to this program. Fellowships range anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 for this particular program. And the only thing you need to do to apply for a fellowship is on the last page of your application, the additional information page, okay, which you can see highlighted here. I did a quick snippet. The first question, would you like to be considered for a merit-based fellowship? Check yes. As long as you check yes, then you will be considered, okay? My advice is check yes, okay? Don't, you know, think, oh, I don't think I'll need a fellowship. I will tell you, things happen. Last year, COVID happened, and all of a sudden, students who didn't think they needed a fellowship actually did after all. And so they were coming back asking if there was still potential fellowship opportunities for them. So don't get yourself to that point. Think ahead, plan ahead. If you want to be considered for a merit-based fellowship, just check yes. That's all we need to do. I will review you for a fellowship. The admissions committee will review you for a fellowship. If you're awarded one, then we would notify you at the time of admission. So in your admissions letter, okay? And last point about the fellowships as well, and I totally forgot my train of thought. I guess the last point about the fellowship is that it's a fancy name. So fellowship, it sounds kind of like, do I need to do something? Is there something that I need to do? Do I have to participate in some kind of on-campus employment or something to keep this? No, it is strictly merit-based. That's all. It's just a different name for a scholarship. Okay. All right. So now we are at, let's see, let's check our questions here. Okay, so is there any, this is a good question, is there any tuition waiver or full or partial fellowships available to international students? Is there anything additional you need to do? So these merit-based fellowships that I'm talking about, they are for international students as well. We do not, unfortunately, offer a full fellowship or a full scholarship for this particular program. As I mentioned, the range is $5,000 to $20,000. So keep that in mind, but they are available to international students as well. Okay, it's a great question. All right. Okay, so I'm going to leave some of these for a little bit later. Let's move on since we're past 8 o'clock, and I appreciate everybody who's sticking around with me while I continue to talk. So I promised you all a free waiver of our application fee if you joined me tonight, and that waiver is right here. So you will find this on the additional information page of your application. Okay, so there will be a spot to input this waiver, and what I have listed here, Irish Web, all caps, all one word, that is your waiver code for the application fee. Whoops, and there I go, scrolling through everything really fast. All right, back to this page here. So Irish Web, that's your fee waiver code for that $50 application fee. You can scramble around and write that down now if you want, or it will be on the last slide as well. I put it on the last slide that I'll keep up while I answer the rest of your questions. So I'm going to go ahead and advance the slide, and you'll see that again in just a minute if you didn't write that down. So I want to quickly touch base on the deadlines, okay? So at this point in time, we have not passed any deadlines yet for this program. So our first deadline coming up is early decision, and that is September 22nd, okay? Now, you can apply at any point prior to September 22nd and be considered in that round. You do not have to wait until September 22nd to submit your application, okay? That's just the very last date that you can submit and be included in that round. Now I have a great question from somebody who's asking, can I submit before then and not be considered an early decision? Unfortunately, no. So if you're wanting to be considered in round 1, then wait until after September 22nd to fully and officially submit your application, okay? So if you're not wanting the early decision, which is binding, okay, it's very similar to your undergraduate applications. So, you know, if you're not into the binding process, then go ahead and wait till round 1 and you can submit right after the early decision deadline and you'll go into that next round, okay? Now, what I want you to know about this chart, and this I actually took directly from our website, okay? Now, the decision date that's listed there is the date on which you will hear about your admissions decision, okay? These rounds are not rolling within the round. So if you apply on September 22nd, you aren't going to hear until October 30th what your decision is, okay? So please keep that in mind. And I ask you, please plan accordingly too. So if you're trying to juggle a couple of different applications with different schools, and you're trying to get decisions around the same time and know about all of your decisions before you commit somewhere, plan ahead and look at these rounds and apply in the best round where you will get the decision before you need your decision, okay? It gets to be very difficult for our admissions committee to review your application and get a decision before that deadline, okay? They plan, because this admissions committee reads applications for every program that we offer, okay? That's 5 specialized master's programs. That's 3 different MBA programs as well. So keep that in mind. It's very difficult to try to get an earlier decision. So plan ahead and apply in the round that gets you the decision at the earliest possible time before you actually need it, okay? Now, the other thing, I've already mentioned this before. In order to meet your deadline, we need your portion of the application, okay? So we just need the application itself. We will need your resume, we will need your essay, your slides, and your recommender contact information, okay? Everything else, the scores, the transcripts, and the actual recommendation letters can come in and be submitted after that deadline, okay? We don't need every piece attached to your application in order for you to submit and be considered in that round, okay? So those pieces can be submitted after the deadline with no penalty to you, okay? All right, so I think that is it with the deadlines, what I wanted to share with you. So let's go back to the questions. And I think we are ready to go to our last slide now. So we are back at your questions now. And again, you're gonna see that Irish Web fee waiver code listed here. So now you can grab a pen and pencil, or pen or pencil and paper, and write that down. So that will be up for the rest of the presentation. All right, so great questions in here. Does applying later decrease your chances of being admitted? The only time where applying later could decrease your chances of being admitted is if you apply in one of the latest rounds and the majority of the class is already full. Okay, so keep in mind that when you apply in a round, once you have been notified, if you have been admitted, you have 30 days to claim your seat in the class after you have been notified. Okay, so seats will fill up very fast as we go through the admissions cycle. So in the later rounds, we are often unable to admit as many students. Okay, so keep that in mind, that you're then sort of working against how full the class is. So it's best to apply as early as you can. Okay. All right, so I think that was basically the same question. And again, so I just mentioned this, and this is another similar question here. So is there a deadline we need to accept your admissions offer? So again, 30 days after you have been admitted, okay? And you'll receive reminders and notifications, so you'll know when that date is. If it's on a weekend, you get to the next business day, okay? A great question here, do your chances of fellowship decrease if you apply later? It can. I would say by the very end of the last round, there could be, much less fellowship money available. So again, apply earlier. But I will tell you too that I have yet to not be able to award an applicant a fellowship because there were no funds left. Okay, it has not been the case for that yet. And in fact, last year, 94% of our admitted students received fellowship money. So good chances there, but I wouldn't wait till the very, very end of the last round. Okay, so that was the same question. You guys are on the same wavelength. You are asking a lot of the same questions. Okay, so I mentioned that the rounds are not rolling admission, and someone's asking if I can explain that. So what rolling admission is applications would be processed as they are received, and decisions are made on a regular basis, often a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, and so decisions are sent out regularly. So with the rounds, you don't get the rolling basis, okay? Instead, you will apply by the deadline. We will process all of those applications within that time frame, and then we will send out all of the decisions on that decision date. So with the early decision round, you apply no later than September 22nd, and we will send out every decision from that round on October 30th. Okay, so not rolling. That's a great question. Okay, so someone's asking for me to repeat what you can submit after the deadline. Okay, so what you can, the pieces of the application that you can submit after the deadline are anything that you can't control. So test scores, you kind of control those, but you can't always control when the score report is sent to us, or if you're taking the test date after the deadline. So the test scores can come in after the deadline. Your transcripts can come in after the deadline. Your recommendation letters can come in after the deadline as well, okay? So the pieces that you have absolute control over, your resume, your slides, your essay, your recommender contact information, all of that you have complete control over. Those are the pieces that you need to submit with your application by the deadline. Okay. All right, good question about this session being recorded. I am recording this session, and I will send out a video recording of it a little bit later. Maybe this week, it might be next week, but I will send out a recording for all of you in case you missed some things, or if you came in late or you couldn't take notes as fast as I'm talking, and I apologize for that, but I will send you a recording. All right. A great question about funding for international students. So are there any other opportunities aside from fellowships? So, and actually this goes back to another question that another person had asked previously about TA positions. if there are TA positions available for this program. So I would say that, outside of the fellowships, the merit-based money, the other options that you would have would be to secure a teaching assistantship or a research assistantship, either through Mendoza or through another college or school on the Notre Dame's campus. And unfortunately, it's not something that you can secure ahead of time. It's something that you can only secure once you're here in the program on campus, because a lot of that is kind of word of mouth between faculty. And you're able to talk to your faculty about opportunities that they might have or that their peers might be, might need. And so they can connect you with various folks on campus. So, but those are always options. We have had students in the past who've served as a teaching assistant or research assistant. You just have to know who to reach out to. And luckily, the academic director of the MSBA knows a lot of faculty and hears a lot about these different positions. So he usually can point students in the right direction. Okay. All right, another great question. What's the typical age range and work experience of MBA applicants? So typical age range is usually between 22 and 24. That's just the typical, but we do have students beyond that, okay? 75% of the students in the program currently have no full-time work experience. They started the program immediately after completing their undergraduate degree, okay? So they've only had internships. Now, 25% of the students in the class have work experience. And in fact, of those 25%, their average months of work experience is actually 33 months. So an average of almost 3 years. So where you probably have seen on the website that the program is designed for candidates with 2 years or less work experience, we do have a little bit of flexibility there, and we have admitted students with a bit higher work experience than that. And so that's why you're seeing an average of nearly 3 years there. So you'll have a good mix in your classes of undergraduate or students that have just completed undergraduate and those who have been out in the workforce for a bit of time. It's a great question. Okay, so one of you is taking the GRE on October 14th, the literal day after the deadline. So can you still apply in round one? Absolutely, yes. So we don't actually need your score by the deadline. Your score can come in after the fact. So that's unfortunately interesting timing for you, but nothing at all to worry about. So when your score is available to you, send us the student copy, the copy that you are sent. Just upload that PDF to your application. That will satisfy your score requirement for now. We will eventually ask you for the official report, but for now, to satisfy the application, we only need the unofficial student copy of your score report. The same goes for your transcripts as well. You can go into your student portal and download a copy of your transcript, and then you can upload that to your application too. So whatever is easiest and quickest for you to satisfy those application requirements. Okay. Okay, so let's see here. And we have another attendee who arrived a little bit later and wanted to know if the GMAT or GRE are required. And yes, we are requiring the GMAT or GRE this year. If anything should happen, we should have another shutdown or spikes in COVID cases and it becomes impossible to take an exam again, then we might waive it. But with the online platforms for many of these exams now, it has become a little bit easier even if testing centers are closed. So we're gonna go ahead and go back to requiring those tests. Okay, let's see here. All right, so I have someone asking about the 80% range for the GPA, and I'm actually going to answer you offline on that because it's something I'll have to look up and get to know, familiarize myself a little bit because it changed this year with our new class, so I am not 100% sure. Okay, so another question here. So I mentioned, so 3 consecutive academic years in the US is necessary to waive the TOEFL. So what if an applicant took courses during the summer to take off the last semester of senior year for full-time internship? So unfortunately, if you just took classes for a summer session, unfortunately that's not enough time. You would need 3 years in the US, or your undergraduate degree was taught in English if it was outside the US. Okay. Great question. Can you enroll in the spring? Does this program have a January start? So unfortunately, no, we do not have a January start for this program. So we only have a fall start. It's because the program is very sequential in terms of the curriculum. And so it doesn't allow for a January start, which would cause a big summer break in between. And, you know, it's a little bit easier to go from one class to the next very quickly and sequentially in order to retain that information. All right, so going back up to a lot of these initial questions that you guys asked early on. So is it possible for someone who already has a master's degree, potentially maybe an MBA, to apply to this program? Absolutely. Yeah, we do have some students who have other master's degrees and in some cases an MBA already. And actually we have a student who already has a doctorate degree in our program this year. So absolutely, if you have an advanced degree, you will add some great value to our cohort. So we would love to see that application come through. All right, another good question is, someone who works full-time, is it possible to complete the program while working? Unfortunately, no. This is a full-time residential program, so classes are typically between 8 and 5 Monday through Thursday. So it's very difficult to have a job, especially a professional full-time job during this program. Okay, this is meant for full-time student. Another great question. I opened a small business a few years ago. Do you think it would be useful in my application? You know, how would I include that? So that's great. We would love to hear more about that. And you can include that on your resume. And make sure that you indicate in your resume that job, that position is your company, and that you were the founder of that company. But we'd love to hear more about that through your resume. Okay, so a great question here. I'm an international student, but I'm in the States for my high school and undergrad. Do I need to submit a TOEFL? Nope. You would qualify for the waiver because you have spent high school education in the US would count as well. Even if you went abroad for your undergrad, but if you spent 3 years in high school, that counts for a waiver also. All right, so what's the best way for you all to stay in contact with me during the admissions process? So you will likely, if you've come to this webinar, you are likely getting plenty of emails from me, and you will see the emails come from the msba.business@nd.edu email address. That's the best way to get in contact with me. I manage that inbox. And so if you send an email to that email address, so it's easy to find in the emails I've already sent to you, you'll get me. You also see my signature box in all of those emails, and my official Notre Dame email address is listed there as well. You can email me there also. Okay, so either one of those is the best way to get in contact with me. Always happy to get emails and help you out however I can. Okay, so now I see some questions in here, and hopefully I've had some folks linger around to get the answer to these. I'm getting questions about GMAT waivers for certain types of students, and I'm going to go ahead and answer those offline for you, but I will, and actually I see though that there was an anonymous sender. So what I'm going to do, I will tell you that in many cases, we do waive the GMAT requirement for Notre Dame students in specific situations, okay? So please reach out to me and I will, by email, and I will share a little bit more about that with you. But please do reach out to me so we can talk offline since you submitted those questions anonymously. But I do want to make sure you get that information. Okay, let's see here. So what are some personality qualities that we look for in the admissions process? You know, we love to see candidates who are involved in their community. We love to see leaders. We like to see those with great teamwork skills. Folks with a sense of humor who can have fun, who make friends easily and can blend in with a new community. Those are all really great qualities that we look for. That's a great question. We have a good question about our MSBA Chicago program. So that's a great question. What's the difference? It is a completely separate program from this MSBA that we're talking about. So we're here discussing the full-time residential MSBA. The Chicago MSBA is 1 calendar year. It is part-time. It is designed for candidates who have 2 or more years of work experience, typically much more experienced than the group of applicants for this program. And these are candidates who will continue to work full-time, most of them in the Chicago area, and complete the program on the weekends. Okay, so it's a very different program. If you're not sure, if you feel like actually I could do either program, reach out to me and I can talk you through it and we'll find the best fit for you. Okay. Okay. Let's see here, work experience. For work experience on the CV, is it necessary to give a detail of what we did since the 1-page requirement is short? I would say bullet points, just, you know, high level bullet points of the type of work that you did if you can fit it, okay? You also can include more information about your work experience in your application as well, okay? So if you need to fill out that a bit more, use the application work experience page to do that. And a good question here, do I think it's a good idea to include internship information that will not have taken place yet? Absolutely. If you want to include that as sort of a footnote, you know, or a side note on your resume that you have been offered an internship and you'll be completing it maybe in the spring semester or you know, in the next couple of months, that's fine. Please do that. That way you don't have to submit a new resume later on once that internship starts. That's a great question. Okay, so I think I've come to the end of the questions. So I appreciate all of you who actually stuck around for an extra half hour to talk with me. Thank you so much. And again, I really appreciate everyone who joined me tonight to learn more about the program. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I'm always happy to get those emails from you, happy to get phone calls as well. So whatever you might need in terms of guidance with your application requirements, if you're not sure about specific deadlines, if you're not sure about prerequisite classes that are counted, I'm always happy to help. Shoot me an email at the msba.business email address or my personal Notre Dame email address, which you can find in my email signature, and I'll be more than happy to help with all of that. So hopefully you all have some inspiration now as you go out and complete those applications. You've got just 2 weeks out until that first deadline. Actually, no, we have 1 week now. Time's getting away from me. So I look forward to seeing your applications coming in very, very soon. And stay safe, everybody. Stay healthy and have fun with these applications. And I look forward to reading them in just a few short weeks. Take care, everybody. Have a good night. Have a good day as well.